If you're a perfectionist like me, then you're going to want to check out this method I use for installing square metal balusters. I'm able to make perfectly square holes using some cheap tools, and it's really easy to do. Stick around and I'll show you how I do it. As you see here, I'm on site installing a new oak railing for a customer. We removed an old iron single-piece railing and installed a new one to match the floors. The balusters are 12mm solid iron with a black powder coat finish. I've done a lot of these railings with slight variations for each one, and they always come out beautiful. What's unique about this one is that there won't be any shoes at the bottom of the baluster. That's the part that covers up the hole. That means my holes can't be round, they have to be perfect squares. I didn't want to take any chances, so I designed a jig to make sure I couldn't mess it up. Right now I'm just showing a quick overall view of how I make the holes for the balusters, but in a minute I'm going to bring you back to the shop and show you a close-up of my step-by-step process. I'll be doing another video on my process for drilling the top holes on the stairs using a special angle jig that I made. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see that video when it comes out. Okay, so we're back in the shop and I'm going to show you some better close-ups of what you just saw on site. What I have here is just a scrap piece of mahogany. I'm going to show you my process for making these mortises as if this were either your stair tread or a run of flooring. Let's start with what you're going to need. So for this process, I use an adjustable square and some painter's tape. That's how I lay out my markings. I like this, specifically this frog tape, the yellow frog tape. I'll leave links down in the description for all of this stuff, but this is my favorite tape to use for stuff like this because it's less likely to pull up any finish off the floor if you're working with a pre-finished wood. This is what's going to make the actual mortise, or the outside dimension of the mortise, and that's the hollow mortise chisel, and it comes with this auger bit. You are going to need this. For my method here, you're going to need this auger bit, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. Then I'm going to use an undersized chisel as well as an undersized Forstner bit. I'll show you what I mean when we go over the dimensions of the baluster. You'll need a mortise jig. So this is the jig that I use. This is a simplified version of the one you saw in the video. Since that job, I made some adjustments and simplified the design, but the concept is exactly the same. You're also going to need some sanding blocks. These are little corner sanding blocks that I like to use. They're super simple to make, and I 3D print these. I will show you at the end of this video. I'll show you how you can get access to both the jig as well as these sanding blocks. You'll need some double-sided tape and a mallet. That's how you're going to attach the jig down to the flooring. And I like to use HS90 that's how I make these sanding blocks. Now let's discuss the sizes of each of these things. So I have a 12mm baluster, solid steel baluster, and this measures only at about 11.5mm. So I'm going to use a 12mm hollow mortise chisel. And my Forstner bit is 7/16, which is just over 11mm. And my chisel is 3/8, or about 10mm. I'm intentionally using a drill bit and a chisel slightly smaller so I don't accidentally bruise the edges of the mortise when I clean it up. You don't want to use a 12mm chisel because you know that as you tap it in, you're going to end up making the hole too big because you're going to end up damaging the sides. Then the sanding blocks, which are at about 11mm, those are going to be that final finish to sand in those corners and get some nice smooth and sharp corners. So I'm assuming you've done your layout already. Let me know if you're interested, and I'll do a video on how I do my layout. But for the purposes of this video, let's assume the handrail is installed. You've marked the center line of your balusters and marked the spacing of each baluster, and you've marked the top holes on the handrail as well. So the process is pretty simple. You want to make sure that you have two lines. I'm going to call this the horizontal and the vertical, which is going to be the center of your baluster. And I'm going to use that, and I need that because this jig has these diamond shapes that are going to line up perfectly with those crosshairs. And what that's going to do is make sure that my baluster is going to be nice and square, and it's going to be, all of them are going to be perfectly in line. So when you put the double-sided tape on the back of this, you want to make sure that you don't cover up those diamonds. So now I'm going to apply that double-sided tape. Make sure it's nice and firm, not moving around on you. And as you'll see, they're perfectly lined up with those diamonds, where that line guarantees that I'm going to be perfectly centered and square with my balusters. Now I'm going to take my hollow mortise chisel with the auger bit installed. And the function of that is just to give me my center point. So I line it up in the jig, and I give a little tap. That makes sure that my starting point for my drill bit, the next step, the Forstner bit, is going to be perfectly centered inside of this jig. Now you'll see the reason that I use the 7/16 bit is so that there's still a little bit of that yellow tape above and on all the sides. And what that does is that makes sure I don't damage the jig itself, and it leaves me just a little bit of space so that I know that the outside perimeter will be from the square mortise hole, not from the drill bit. That drill bit was just to take out the bulk of the material. Then I'm going to take that auger bit out. I'm going to set up my mortise chisel. I'm going to drive it in about to the depth of that other hole, about a ½ inch. What you can do is you can make a mark on the side of this mortise chisel to the depth that you want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a little mark, because I think that's about where I want it, on the side of this. If I'm happy with that depth, I'll use that as my mark moving forward. If I need to go a little up or down, then I can adjust accordingly. Now the next part's a little tricky, getting this out. So part of the design of this jig is to allow this little point to be a fulcrum for the lever, excuse me. So what this is that you're going to use some vice grips, and I'm going to go at a slight angle, and I'm going to hold it nice and tight. And the purpose of this is that I'm going to give a little bit of a tap while I kind of wiggle up. The idea is to not wiggle too wide forward or backward, because you could potentially damage the wood itself. So by doing it this way, I'm able to get a little more vertical leverage. So I'm basically pulling up while I'm tapping this. And once it kind of wiggles a little bit loose, I can take this back off. And now I'm able to do it just by hand. Now I can peel this off. The design of this jig is to be flexible, so that it makes it better to be able to peel it off after you're done using it. Now I'm just going to repeat the same process for the other two holes. So now what you see here is I just have some leftover material on the inside that I have to clean up with a regular chisel and a vacuum. And the way I'm going to clean up this hole really simply is I'm going to go flat side up against the edge, and kind of push down and bend inward, because you don't want to damage the outside of the hole. So all I'm trying to do is make room for that baluster. Now all I want to do is take those sanding blocks that I have and just make sure that I'm nice and flat. I have nice sharp corners. I'll just go around to each corner. Now, it's important, I like to only push down when you're sanding with this. If you pull up too much, you're likely to damage and get some pull out or tear out of the top fibers of that wood. So I want to make sure that I'm always pushing downward. And again, I'm using 120 grit sandpaper here. And you get a nice tight fitting hole like that. That baluster is standing on its own right now. That's how tight the hole is, so that there's very little wiggle room. I couldn't be happy with the results from this method. I've seen other guys use a similar technique, just doing it freehand, where they'll just take the mortise chisel and they'll just eyeball it, but I don't think that it gives you accurate enough results. I think that this allows me to get perfectly straight, perfectly square holes, nice and tight to the baluster. I've tried the other way and just found that you get these rounded spots right along the edge that come from, say, the Forstner bit, or your hole might be slightly twisted, crooked. I just think that this gives me more accuracy. If you're interested in getting any of these jigs, you can check out my website, prohomeproducts.com, and click on downloads. If you or someone you know has a 3D printer, you can download the file and print it yourself. That goes for both the mortise jig and the corner sanding blocks. If you don't have a 3D printer, just use the Contact Us page to reach out and we can print them for you and mail them straight to your door. So make sure to check out that page. They're not expensive. We just launched that part of the site, so keep checking back for new designs and products. Any purchases you guys make on that website help to support this channel so I can continue to provide new content and 3D print designs. So I appreciate the support. Thanks again for watching. Hopefully, I'll see you on the next one.